Welcome to the Smart Connector podcast. I have a really fantastic guest for you tonight. Guillaume is a strategy consultant and a leadership coach who guides CEOs and founders to align people and accelerate the adoption of innovation. So, we're going to be talking a lot about innovation tonight. And he's the founder of MetaHelm, which is a consulting firm focused on building strategic narratives for established businesses. And you might be thinking, well, what's a strategic narrative and what's the difference between that and a regular story? So we will be getting into that tonight. So welcome, Guillaume. It's great to have you here.
Jane, it's great to be here too. Talking today from Seattle, and
Yes.
it's awesome to be connected with my European roots here because I'm from France. So lovely talking to you today.
Yes, exactly. And we were having a little chat beforehand, and I was just saying how excited I am to be interviewing somebody from Seattle because it's the home of grunge. And yeah, what can be more exciting than that? For somebody that's really into music, which I am.
I
Yeah,
am too. Let's talk about it.
yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so tell me, Guillaume, how did you end up in Seattle? You came to Seattle from France, right? So what was your journey before you ended up here in Seattle, or there in Seattle, I should say?
I decided to immigrate here in 2008 because my wife is from here. We used to work in and live in France together. Before that, I was it was I'm counting here. It was founding my third company back in France, co-founding my third companies, and she was missing home and I was ready for a change. So we decided to pack our stuff after we had our first child. He was only 9 months old, so fairly easy to carry around in the little bassinet,
Portugal.
portable. So
Yes.
we put him in the move. We packed our stuff, sold most of the things we had, and just lightweight and just expatriated ourselves to the United States. And then what's you know obviously 2008 for a French guy who can basically speak English but not as fluently as I do now. I knew no one in Seattle. It was an interesting time because 2008 was just the beginning of the financial crisis here in the United States. It was kind of a not a very not a time that somebody would have picked to go network and start over a career here. And it
No.
took me to paths that I was not expecting that were actually great. With hindsight, I look at this decision with like one of the best decisions in my career I ever made. And also thankful that I picked Seattle as a place to build another company. And Seattle is just this absolutely staggering entrepreneurial stage and platform with so many interesting companies and technology. Of course, we hear about Seattle for tech companies, but many other areas, many other domains. So there's a great rebound in the years after that.
Yeah, it's interesting because, as I said, we were chatting beforehand and we were just saying that, Seattle's roughly on the same latitude as the UK, isn't it? So you probably
I
have
think
some of the
so.
similar weather. And of
Maybe
course, northern France as well.
I think
Uh,
we are even we're a little more south of London,
oh,
so we
okay.
we should technically get warmer weather, but I think it's about the same.
Yeah, okay, that's right. Yeah. So when we're living in these places where it's not, rains a lot and the
Mhm.
skies are grey and so on, they do tend to lend themselves to creativity, don't they?
It's interesting. I've heard that before, Jane. I can confirm that there is something there. I don't know what it is, and I'm no expert, but you're right. It seems like maybe it's the rain or the gray sky or the fact people are inside, turning to the, you know, maybe more introspective. I don't know, but that's for sure. There is something there. Absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think absolutely that, because the thing is, if the sun was shining, we'd all be outside playing sports, wouldn't we? And, running around and having fun with our dogs and, just sunbathing and doing all that stuff that's fun to do when the sun is out. But in the absence of that, what are we left doing? We have to fall
Mhm.
back on ourselves and our own creativity and resources a lot. Well,
Mhm.
at least that's
Mhm.
that's something that I've always done. I suppose you don't
Yeah.
have to do that, but
One of
yeah.
the what just one another side comment, and you were saying you like music. So so I'm a musician too. I play the piano, the keyboard, I sing. And
Ah,
one of the first thing I did, moving in Seattle, was connect with the music community. And so
aha.
I found a band, a spot, as a gig, as a keyboard player in this funk band called Marmalade, that has
Ooh,
been playing in Seattle for over 2 decades, or even 3 decades, like a big collective of musicians. So that was my first reconnecting with my tribe, if I could say. And this was all about creativity and connections, and the spirit of creating something new collectively together.
aha. So tell me, is the whole grunge scene still big in Seattle? Because of course Nirvana was the big band, weren't they? Back in the day. So is there a kind of grunge tradition that is still there today?
I think there's definitely that. I mean, it's
Mm.
part of our heritage here, our tradition, our history. And you can't go anywhere without a reference to this. We've got also great bands like Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam is the lead guitar of Pearl Jam just lives a few yards away from me, and so
Oh,
we have a record store here in West Seattle that has this fascination for this band. That's they're almost their private record store. You can find anything Pearl Jam that you like, but there's also respect for other musical movements. It's a really big hodgepodge and mix of things. You'll have artists come on that, on little stages here around the neighborhood, and play some cover songs from really all kinds of bands. So there is a very vibrant music scene. I think that's what the grunge movement did for Seattle, like reignited this idea that Seattle is a music scene. It was not, I mean, it was not the first time. Obviously, there was Jimmy Smith, and even very famous artists like Ray Charles played in Seattle. And there's always that aspect to Seattle, and it's still there. And it's interesting to see that after COVID, when year and a half, 2 years of like no concert and really quiet, like everything is coming back right away, because there is still many musical things happening here in the area. But we got so many great artists, even in the rap domain. With
mhm.
Macklemore is from Seattle, has been huge influence in the music scene here in Seattle. So it's music heaven here.
Oh, well, I'm gonna come. I just think this is one of the really fun things about podcasting, is that
Mhm.
you meet people from all over the world, and
Yeah.
my sister used to live in California for a very long time, but I would love to come to Seattle. So it's, well, I'm afraid I'm gonna turn up and I'm gonna go and make friends with your neighbor and
Let's go. Come on
yeah,
over. No, I'm
okay.
serious. I'm
Yeah,
serious.
no, that would be really nice. Um, so let's start talking about this whole thing about strategic narratives. So I think there's a couple of things that I really want to talk to you about, Guillaume, tonight. So one of them is obviously innovation and the importance of innovation, because I don't really know if people understand how important innovation is in terms of actually keeping your message fresh and relevant. So I'd love to talk about that, but also this thing that is very special to you, which is this
Mhm.
issue of strategic narratives. So if it's okay with you, maybe we can start there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so where should I start? What should I start with?
Yeah, so we were talking beforehand about the difference between a strategic narrative and storytelling,
That's
because
right.
yeah, in the world of brand, of
Mhm.
course, a lot of people talk about stories, because
Right.
stories are a very convenient way of actually cutting through the noise and actually resonating emotionally with
Mhm.
your audience. And of course, I come from the world of branding and I'm completely familiar with that, because they just disarm people, don't they?
Yeah.
So what is the difference between, let's just say, brand storytelling and a strategic narrative? I think that'd
Yeah.
probably be a good place to start.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. Uh, so the difference are there are many differences. First of all, if you look in the dictionary, you look for story and narrative. It's like two terms that we use kind of in the same way, right? Interchangeably, they sound like synonym. And for many years, I was doing this, going back and forth between both. And then I could sense with the companies I was working with that were trying to make storytelling work, but I could see also how it is difficult for many business leaders to really understand the concept. Although we can all recognize a good story, right? Putting one together is another thing. And so I'm trying to work with founders and CEOs of companies, say, hey, because they come to me and say, we want to increase our the rate of our of our product adoption. For instance, we want to grow faster. We have this really amazing product that people don't really understand how great it is. So we want to make it like, we want to really make sure that people see how awesome it is. And we heard that storytelling could be the great thing to do. So like, yeah, let's try to make it work. And I could see how difficult it is. And very often time I run into situations where most people will think that storytelling is a branding thing. We associate it with marketing and branding almost like kind of instantly. It's kind of the instant, because that's how we've been trained over the past 10 to 15 years in the business community. And I realized that actually what many of the founders and CEOs are working this is actually different than just storytelling. They're what they're trying to do is form a community of people. It starts with a team. It starts with and then it goes with clients, with partners, investors, and rally them around a common goal. And in doing a little more research about what the storytelling literature is, I come across the fact that there is actually a difference between story and narrative. Stories are mostly about what happened in the past. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yeah.
And so if you say, hey, let me tell you a story, it might be something that you either experience or you heard about or you're making up. And the traditional model is one that Joseph Campbell published about extensively, with the hero's journey. And so somebody faces a struggle, comes out of it, and it's not easy, but finally wins. So that we've been educated with this very much in the movie industry. When you hear the term narrative, it implies other facets that storytelling doesn't bring in. A narrative is a point of view. It's something that has a beginning, a middle, but not necessarily an end. We don't know yet how things are going to unfold. And so if you look at how culture, religions, economic institutions, governments form and actually disappear, it's all through this idea of a narrative. There is an aspiration, something that we don't quite know exactly how it's going to land, but we are all aspire towards the same thing. If you look at what's happening now in Europe with the war between Russia and Ukraine, I see it as a war between different narratives, political narratives and religious narratives, territorial narratives. And so if you look at this, you go outside of the business sphere for a little bit and see how human groups form, and you even do research. This is not a new thing. It was even before storytelling. It's how the human species gets together and manages to survive, because we get together in little tribes and we start believing in myth. And that because we can imagine things, we're able to come up with creative solutions to survive. All right. With that, I thought, okay, let's see how we can apply that to a business context. And so with the companies I was working with, like, okay, let's take a look at this differently. What if we were to craft a set of messages, a set of ideas that would really powerfully bring people together? Forget stories for just a second. Let's see how we can do that. We'll bring stories back later. And so what I'm finding then is that although people will pay for a story, people will die for a narrative. The level of engagement is just drastically different. And so, and in looking at how companies who disrupt markets operate, how they emerge and thrive, this is the common denominator. So I started studying, companies from all sorts of domains. So I published a case study on how Volvo really positioned themselves as the number one automotive manufacturer in the 60s and 70s, all about security, and they built this new narrative for what car manufacturing should be about. So one of the myths that people have in mind when they do innovation is that they go, hey, we have a great product, and so that's innovation, and we're going to assume that it's so great that people will see that and they will instantly want to fall in love and buy it. And to me, that's not innovation, that's invention.
Uh-huh.
What is missing is adoption, right? So
Uh-huh.
that's the missing link between invention and innovation, is adoption. And
Uh-huh.
so what happens with companies who manage to turn around entire industries and really end up being great innovators, that they change a narrative about something. They change the way we think about doing something, right? And they compel us to act differently. So here's an example from the US. Netflix. How did Netflix start? What would you do, Jane, if you wanted to watch a movie that you didn't have at home? What would you do before Netflix?
Go and get a DVD from
From a store, maybe,
or maybe pay a premium for Sky Movies.
right. Okay. So maybe one or the other. And so this was kind of our common mode to do that. And the founder of Netflix Recasting is also living through this narrative. That's how he operates on a day-to-day basis. And one day he happens to turn his DVD way late and be fined for it, and goes and like $20 or $40 and goes,
Yeah,
that's
I
not fair.
remember that. I did that a few times too.
Right, and that hurts, right? And he
Yeah.
starts thinking, what is my wife gonna think about? So that's how the new narrative for a new way to enjoy entertainment started, was with the realization that he was becoming suddenly more aware of something that he found unfair, and he wanted to do something about it. So in the origin story of Netflix, you see the root of a new narrative for how we enjoy movies. And so moving on, he was really compelled to change this, and like decide, how do we do this? So a little bit later, he was walking past a gym and thought, what about if I could just enjoy movies just the same way I enjoy my gym? I pay a membership, once a month, and I can just go or not go as much or as less as I want. What if we could apply the same? So he started Netflix based on this idea, which was a radically different narrative about how we enjoy movies. So at that time, did he know how this was going to end? No, he had no idea. He was trying something. That's the difference between a story and a narrative. What was his story? The story was like, I'm a regular dude and I'm a regular guy. I'm trying to to not be fined when I rent movies. I just want to change this. So if you start disconnecting story and narrative, you enter a new mindset for innovation. You see things differently. You look at your company as a vehicle for change, first of all, and as a vehicle that could rally people to create a community of people who do things differently, almost like what I was talking before, creating a new tribe, if you will. So this has not, it has to do with marketing and branding at some point, but not just that. It has to do with how you form a company. It has to do with leadership. And although many people will say, hey, storytelling is an act of literature. That's why, I hear this all the time. I'm not a good storyteller. I can't write. I'm not very creative at this. That's actually the narrative of most business people. And I tell them, to build a narrative, you don't need all of that. You don't have to be worried about this. We'll get to that later. What you need right now is to focus on what are the core beliefs that are different that you have, relative to the problem you're trying to solve. If you feel like, in your industry, some things should work differently, this technology has to be changed, some processes need to be completely revamped, or the way we hire people, whatever this might be, this is what you need to focus on. And this is a change management process. We're not talking about marketing yet. Now, marketing comes also in the sphere of narrative, but after that.
This is just absolutely fascinating because as you're talking, I'm really getting the distinction
Mhm.
because brand storytelling is more like making sense of marketing, really.
Yeah.
It's a way of actually, okay, we've got this offer, we've got this product, and we're going to package it up in a
Yeah.
way that bypasses the curiosity filter because that's what we need to do,
Right.
so that people understand this. But I think what I'm getting from you is this thing about strategic narrative is really to do with the sort of subtext of why, it's why the business is there, why it's doing what it's doing, and that is absolutely fascinating.
Well, in what you just said we've got a product or a service and see how we can make people interested about it. That's marketing.
Yes.
Flip this around. We are interested in something that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
What is that narrative? Once we have that, let's come up with a product,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? That's what a strategic narrative is about. Then
Oh,
once we have the product, we may package it in a brand or marketing that ties to the initial narrative. Of course, you can't do anything without marketing or branding, but there is this initial step that most entrepreneurs just completely overlook. They think it's normal, they think it's like it's the way it is, and they don't organize it strategically, intentionally.
yes. Yeah, and I think that's such an important point. And I often find when I speak to my clients or my prospects or whatever, that the less experience they have and the less they really kind of understand this stuff, the faster they want to dive into tactics. And it's like, well, what should I do? And really, the answer is, well, I don't know what you're going to do because, first of all, you have to look at why you're doing it and you have to there's so much more
Yeah.
than just the tactics, really. It's they just deliver the strategy, don't they? But the strategy is the thing that determines success, whether
Yeah.
it's business strategy or whether it's brand strategy. So yeah, absolutely fascinating, such an amazing topic.
Did I answer your question? Was different, and I think it was a long-winded answer, but it's a complex topic. So did I answer it?
Oh, yes, yes,
Just want to make
definitely. I mean, I've got
it
101
sounds like
other questions, of course. So I think the interesting thing, Guillaume, maybe to explore next is, how does this actually manifest in terms of the work that you're doing or you have been doing with your clients? Can you give us a couple of examples, maybe even just one example?
well, I get. Let me talk to you about how I start some work with companies, how the work shows up. It could be a different kind of thing. So just this morning, I had a conversation with the head of commercial development for a company in the aerospace industry, and they were founded 8 years ago with lots of means, big funding, and they were able to grow very rapidly from 300 to 3,000 people.
Mhm.
But it seems like the growth is getting more and more difficult for them, and they're seeing silos within the companies. There are, I think of people as vectors. I tend to think this way, and a vector has a direction and an intensity. And if you look at, if you can imagine for a moment 3,000 little arrows going everywhere, that's what their companies is kind of feeling like. That was the description I had from this person. And so that's a company with a narrative that is probably fuzzy, that has been misinterpreted or reinterpreted too many times, and we lose a sense of direction. And research shows that in companies of about 1,000 people, or only 10% of people would be able to say where the ship is going, where the company is headed. So that's a data point for that 1,000 people. But I talked to companies like company that I work with manufacture boots in Sweden, and they're a much smaller entity, about 30 people, and they're feeling the same. So that's
Mhm.
the problem that you may encounter if you feel like your narrative is not quite quite right. We've lost sense of what are we trying to achieve, but not just
Yeah.
inside but outside. And so the work is a leadership type of work. It's a
Yeah.
strategy type of work. It also includes communication.
Yeah.
It's a very holistic approach, and it consists of regrounding what the group is doing into a purpose. And so typically I will work with the CEO, the founder of the leadership team, because that's the people at the helm and able to make decisions. So that's where the work starts, but it doesn't stop here. We want to include and co-create the narrative with people. So what does co-creating a narrative mean? It means possibly having conversations, writing down what we observe, but also bringing the outside world to us, clients we've helped, and listening, for what impact we've created in their life. One of the biggest mistake that I see all the time is that we assume that we have internally inside the company. We assume that we know what the impact of the company is. We assume that we know how we should position the company. We assume that we know, hey, if we're building, another of my clients here in Seattle is in the operational technology network business.
Mm-hmm.
They equip large multi-site retailers with networks that are cyber secure. I'll leave
Yeah.
it at that. And so for the longest time, they were assuming that the value they bring to the client was X. And then I say, do you mind if we go ask your client a specific way? And they say, yeah, let's do that, because you're right. We might have a hard time describing what we are from inside our jar. And so we went out, I carried a series of interviews to find out that the value they're providing was expressed in completely different terms. Words that they were actually really excited about, that they had lost the connection there. They are just so tactically focused, operationally, technically focused, that they had lost that. So the work with them provided a better positioning to the company. So one of the things that we work on when we revitalize a strategic narrative is, what are the differentiators? What are the difference from the for this company, but not from the inside out, from the outside in. Like, what are people saying about us? Like, what is the difference that we're creating out there? So that's one of the examples there.
Yeah, and that's absolutely fascinating, because I think assumptions is something that all of us carry, right? It's just a human condition, isn't it, to take shortcuts and to say, oh, I know this and I know that.
Yep.
And of course, that is also the enemy of innovation, isn't it? Assumption is the enemy of innovation, because when we believe that we know and when we shut down curiosity, then we are not going to do something different and exciting.
I think you're right to a certain extent. I also
Uh-huh.
see assumptions are good hypotheses to test. But
Uh-huh.
what is the true enemy is to stay there.
Uh-huh.
So let me take an example. I'm assuming that there is one. I'm assuming it's a real case, an early stage startup that I'm working with. I'm assuming that getting organized with healthcare appointments when a relative is sick is really, really hard, because I'm experiencing it, right? So I want to do something about it. In fact, I found a solution for my mother, who was, I'm just kind of role playing here, what's happening what may happen in the head of the entrepreneur. I just took care of my mother. She survived cancer. It was really, really hard to organize all of that. And so that gave me a business idea. I want to go build a product to provide better care for families and orchestrate and coordinate all of those efforts and doctor's appointments, medicines, and so on. So I'm making this assumption. Because I'm excited about this opportunity to change, I am willing to start a business, put some money, maybe quit a comfortable job and go for it and innovate. And
Yeah.
right now, per my definition, you have an invention. You don't have an innovation yet. So I'm willing to do this. And so I think in that context, the assumption is good, right? I'm starting something. But
Yeah.
what's dangerous, to your point, what's dangerous is if I just stay there and I just don't do nothing else. Don't do
Uh-huh.
anything else.
Yeah.
I want to quickly vet in if my assumption is that. So the best way to do this, that's what I'm helping this company do, is write this narrative. What will it look like when you have people that join, and why should they help you? Why should they fund your company? Why should they use your product? Why should they be excited now about this new offer that you're putting out? So we do this very quickly. We draft it, and then we go share it and talk about it. We don't have a product yet. We don't have branding or marketing yet. We have a narrative. We have a hypothesis, right? And we go test our assumptions, and we come back with insight. We come back with many, many good ideas. We come back with good questions, pushbacks that are going to stimulate us and be creative in the right way, in a way that is productive, that is meaningful, for the development of the product. So I just wanted to jump back on that notion here that assumptions are bad. Yes, if we stay with them for too long.
Yeah, no, that's a fascinating point, and seeing assumptions as hypotheses, I love that. I mean, what business owner would not want to have you by their side, Guillaume? I must say, when you're actually asking all those questions that the marketplace would ask, why, and then go out and test, and then find out what the market says. It's just, amazing. I can really see how you create enormous value. Yeah. So, Guillaume, you consult obviously for some pretty big companies. I'm just having a look at your profile. Oh, I seem to have lost it. I was just going to go back to it, but you do consult for some big companies, but you also have an offer for early stage businesses. So, would you like to just go through how you work for those two different groups?
Right. So yeah, the format is different because the means and the budget. I mean, the context is different, but at the core, I'm really looking for interesting and courageous entrepreneurs who understand that a company is not just putting a bunch of money into building a product and launching it. That's not just that. It's also about creating something of value for a community. So that's the common denominator. So with large companies, engagements and work can last a long time. I have to rally, large sets of people, and so we need bigger means. If you are an early stage founder, I have a 7-week program that I call the Strategic Narrative Workshop, and I run it about once a quarter, and it's been fantastic to see the results that come out of this. I only limit it to a small set of people, about 7 to 10 people,
Mhm.
and we form a group of like-minded people, entrepreneurs, for 7 weeks, and we work with my methodology. And so you don't need to have a prerequisite, do I have material, or no, you just show up with this idea that you want to create a different kind of company. You have to have a business case, right? You don't do that just for the learning experience. You do that to apply. It's a workshop,
Mhm.
so there is work implied.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
gonna be some work, but the value that this program creates is things like, hey, I'm so much clearer with what I thought I was building, but now I get it. I really want to build this thing that is different. So decision making, I was a little wishy-washy. I didn't know if I should go that route or that route. Now I've got clarity. We talked about differentiation. I say, why is this really different? And how do I explain the product that I have in mind if it doesn't exist, or that I have a prototype for, or maybe at a small scale? And how do I make people excited about joining me on this journey? So that's what the strategic workshop is about.
Oh, it sounds amazing.
Do you want to join?
Really, really. Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Just let me know. We'll put the link in the chat as well. So,
Yeah, that'd be
yeah,
good.
we'll make sure that we release it. So any listeners that want to join the strategic workshop, I think it sounds absolutely amazing. So that's what you offer for founders of small businesses,
Mhm.
Guillaume. So tell me about some of the bigger businesses that you're involved in. What kind of work are you doing for them?
So while the base of the methodology is similar,
Yeah.
I come in with a framework that I call the strategic narrative canvas,
Uh-huh.
and the context I operate will be range from, you know, we have this new product offer, we have this new product that requires a new business model, and our culture is very consumer product centric, and we
Mhm.
want to enter the electronics and device space. That's a real case. One of my
Mhm.
clients is L'Oreal, has been, you know, shifting their business model to something more digital, and
Yeah.
so I've been working with you know, with the executive committee of L'Oreal and some of the brand presidents here in the United States for several years to help them shift really where the company is headed, and introduce new ideas, new business ideas, new business model ideas. So that's one example. It could be a merger or acquisition that require a new narrative. Oh, I hear a friend.
He likes to get involved. Yes, he does.
He
I'm
gets
just gonna
excited.
go on mute for a moment. Just
Sounds good. Sounds good. He gets excited about innovation too.
right. He just wants to join
Okay.
in the party. He's like, I know you're having fun in there,
Yeah, me
and
too.
yeah, that's right. He's like, you've left me out. It's not fair. It's like, okay, come on in.
So yeah, I was talking about, you know, how I work with larger companies. It's I always work in close proximity with the business leaders. Typically, it will be the CEO or VP of product development or marketing. It depends on the case. You know, it's a holistic approach. I'm not a marketing agency. I'm a strategist. Although people again tend to assimilate what I do to marketing, it has a strong connection for sure. But
Yeah,
it's not just marketing.
yeah.
I have a 360-degree view. So another example is the work I do with Microsoft here in Seattle. I've been helping them rethink and reshape the way they have their product teams organized. You know, reskill them. You know, Microsoft changed CEOs a few years ago now, and that was a big cultural transformation. I've done some work with Alaska and local airline here. It's a national airline, actually. It's, Alaska Airlines, to transform the culture of some of their subsidiaries who felt like they the narrative was, hey, we don't feel integrated to the rest of the company. We feel like we're doing something of value, but we don't know quite what it is. And it was true. That was what people had in mind for 3,500 people, employees. So you can imagine the type of culture that this kind of shapes over time is not very positive. So we had to shift this and let people also have a say in how they viewed this company. So I worked there for a while with the CEO of Horizon Airline, who had very interesting ideas as far as how to also make people collaborate to shape the company, not just the C-suite. So he was viewing his job really as a facilitator of company growth and not
Mm.
the dictator of company growth, which is, you know, many people think, yeah, the company growth is just this person is responsible for it and they have all the answers. It's really not true. It should be about, you know, collective understanding, collective insights. You know, very often time people in close proximity to the employees have so many answers.
They
So
do,
give you
yes.
like a range of examples here.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I'm just taking in and I'm just absorbing everything that you've said, Guillaume, because there's so much interesting stuff there, and I love the way that you frame some of this as well. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Well, so Guillaume, what we're going to do is we're going to put your workshop in the chat because I'm sure that it's going to be absolutely amazing. I have personally got so much out of our interview tonight. And I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to show up here and share your wisdom and experience with my audience. It really has been such a pleasure. And thank you so much. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I think you just go to web browser and type in strategicnarrative.com. and
Okay.
that's where I live. You'll have everything about me, about my work. There's a free ebook to download to get you educated, and really understand what are the intricacies of strategic narrative. So strategicnarrative.com.
Strategicnarrative.com. That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Guillaume, once again, thank you so much. I'm going to be knocking on your door in Seattle, hopefully.
Please.
Yeah, at least within the next year. That's my target. And if you do come to London, hopefully you will do the same here. But thank you again. Yeah.
I want to just leave you with this, Jane. First of all, I love the connection we created today, and your podcast is awesome. So I hope more people listen to it. This is just the breadth of the diversity of people you have is just staggering. So it has become now one of my number one sources of ideas for the work that I do. So thank you so much for putting this podcast out.
Thank you so much, Guillaume. That really means a lot to me. And I will look forward to keeping in touch and seeing you again soon.
All right. See you in Seattle.
Yeah.